Beneath the silent stones of Egypt, a secret workshop is racing against time to create a crown worthy of Queen Cleopatra. Here, gold is not decoration. It is power, faith, and the image of a kingdom. Every passage is guarded, every sound is hidden, because the Queen's treasures must never be seen by ordinary eyes.
One crack in the cobra is more than a mistake. It is a warning that could shame the entire royal workshop.
In this buried world of fire and stone, nameless hands are forging the symbol that will decide how Egypt sees its queen. For the youngest hands in the workshop, one tiny mistake could become a disaster remembered by the palace.
The mold is cracked! Get the wet cloths! Stop, fools! You'll shatter it further. Let it cool.
When Cleopatra entered, the fire itself seemed to obey her presence.
Before the queen ever saw the gold, the journey began beneath the desert sun. Every fragment of gold was guarded like a royal secret, carried deep into the place where power would be shaped by hand. Before gold could become royal beauty, it had to be broken, tested, and purified by hands that history would never remember. The old master knew that royal craftsmanship was not only skill, it was discipline, silence, and the courage to correct a mistake. Above them, the desert remained silent. Below, an entire hidden world burned in service of Cleopatra's power. The furnace was the first trial. Only gold strong enough to survive the fire could become worthy of the throne. To shape the queen's crown, they first had to command the fire, honed, not with magic, but with muscle, timing, and fear. In the heart of the furnace, the gold lost its old shape, preparing to be reborn as a symbol of royal power. The apprentice carried more than a mold. He carried the fear of failure and the hope of being worthy. Every tool had a purpose, every stone had meaning, and every movement had to obey the law of perfection. The crown began not as an object of beauty, but as a dangerous act of precision under fire. The first shape had survived the fire, but survival was not enough. For Cleopatra, only flawlessness could reach the throne. Royal beauty was not born in a single moment. It was carved slowly from patience, pressure, and fear. The smallest detail would soon be seen by Cleopatra, so every surface had to be refined with patience and care. Every color carried meaning: blue for the heavens, red for life, and gold for the flesh of the gods. The workshop moved like a living body, every hand serving one purpose: to create power that could be worn. Under the silent gaze of the gods, the crown was carried deeper into the workshop, closer to judgment. Before Cleopatra could judge the crown, the workshop had to judge itself. The cobra was more than decoration. It was protection, warning, and the eye of royal authority. In this place, beauty was not enough. Anything less than perfect had to return to the fire. Failure was not hidden. It was destroyed, purified, and forced to begin again. For the apprentice, the gold was no longer just metal. It had become a test of courage. The master did not offer comfort. He placed the tool correctly in the apprentice's hand and gave him the responsibility to continue.
One line too deep could ruin the crown. One line too weak could dishonor the queen.
As Cleopatra's arrival drew closer, the hidden workshop became a race against silence, heat, and fear. While the crown carried royal authority, the necklace carried Egypt's sacred language of sky, sun, river, and divine rule. Every bracelet had to shine without arrogance, fit without weakness, and speak of power without a single word. The crown was beginning to shine, but the final judgment would come from a queen who noticed everything. The workshop was no longer only a place of labor. It was becoming a chamber of judgment. Before Cleopatra entered the workshop, Her arrival was already felt in every echo beneath the pyramid.
The moment he feared had arrived, before his hands felt ready.
At last, the crown was whole planed, but whether it was worthy remained in Cleopatra's hands. The hidden world of fire and labor fell silent as royal judgment entered the room.
Cleopatra did not need to raise her voice. Her presence was enough to command the chamber.
Every hand that shaped the gold now waited for the queen's eyes to decide its fate.
To Cleopatra, these treasures were not ornaments. They were the language of rule. In her gaze, beauty became strategy, and gold became a weapon of belief.
The queen's hand moved slowly, and every soul in the workshop waited for the smallest sign of approval or rejection. The repaired cobra faced the one gaze no craftsman could escape.
A single hidden flaw could have become a whisper against the throne.
Her silence was heavier than anger, because silence left every fear alive. With one small movement, Cleopatra turned fear into survival. No one needed to celebrate loudly. In the queen's presence, relief became a quiet and respectful silence. The crown had earned her approval, and now each royal treasure had to express the same elegance, meaning, and authority.
Cleopatra did not look for beauty alone. She looked for a message strong enough to rule a room before she spoke.
Blue for the heavens, red for life, gold for the gods. Every color was chosen to turn a queen into a living symbol. At last, the labor of hidden hands stood before the woman it was made to glorify.
The treasures were no longer objects on stone. With careful hands, they became part of Cleopatra's royal image.
Piece by piece, gold transformed Cleopatra from ruler into an image of divine authority. Every bracelet was a boundary between the human woman and the legend Egypt needed her to become.
The workshop had forged more than jewelry. It had forged the image of power itself. He would never be known by name, but for one brief moment, he saw the care of his hands reflected in the queen's gold.
With every step, Cleopatra carried the hidden labor of the workshop into the image of royal power. The nameless hands that shaped the gold now bowed before the image they had created.
The repaired cobra no longer looked like a risk. It looked like command.
The master did not smile, but in his silence lived the pride of a lifetime. His name would never be carved into stone, yet a piece of his courage now lived in the queen's crown. The queen had passed judgment, but the hidden workshop could not rest. Power always demanded the next treasure. What remained on the table was not only dust and tools, but the memory of a night when fear became craftsmanship. The treasures were not displayed for long. What served the queen in public would soon be hidden again in stone. In the hidden rooms beneath the pyramid, royal beauty became a guarded secret once more. Once the seal was pressed, the gold belonged not to the hands that made it, but to the silence of history. The treasures had survived fire, judgment, and fear. Now they entered the silence of stone. What had been made by human hands was being buried beneath the weight of a kingdom. The last light touched the queen's treasure, then disappeared into history. The apprentice could not follow the gold into legend, but he knew a part of him had gone with it. Their work would continue in darkness, because behind every royal image there were always unseen hands. Dawn would reach the desert above, but here below, time was measured only by fire, labor, and duty. The fire that shaped the queen's image was finally allowed to rest. For the apprentice, the night had changed everything. He had entered it as a worker and survived it as a craftsman. Above the hidden chamber, the world would never know what had happened beneath its feet. The pyramid stood in silence, holding the memory of the hands that transformed fire and gold into the royal image of Cleopatra. By sunrise, the hidden entrance had to disappear, sealed by stone, effort, and the disciplined strength of those who guarded the royal secret. The desert was the final guardian, erasing every sign of the hands that worked through the night. Above ground, Egypt saw only stone, sand, and silence. The work was finished, but the chamber still carried the sound of fear, fire, and judgment. He left behind only a tool, but within it remained the memory of the crown he helped save. The master had spent a lifetime shaping gold, but that night he had shaped something greater, a craftsman who could carry the tradition forward. Long after the treasures vanished, the table still held the marks of fire, fear, and devotion. History often remembers queens and kings, but forgets the hidden rooms where their legends were made. The pyramid stood unchanged, guarding the secret of nameless hands beneath millions of stones. The world remembers Cleopatra as a queen of beauty, intelligence, and power.